Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. And a very, very warm welcome to our Chartered Banker Young Banker of the Year 2020 Grand Final. The most exciting, the most exhilarating, the most inspiring event in the Chartered Banker Institute calendar. I'm Simon Thompson, Chief Executive of the Institute, the oldest banking institute in the world. We're proud of our history and heritage in Scotland, where I'm joining you from today, and the UK, and we're proud today of our vibrant community of 30,000 members and students in more than 100 countries, many of whom are joining us today from around the world, and you're all very, very welcome. I'm especially proud that today, although we can't meet in person at the Mansion House in London for the grand final of this great competition, we can still come together to celebrate and showcase the best, the brightest, the most brilliant young people on whom the future of our banking profession will be built. And after a year like this one, heaven knows it's good to have something to celebrate. In January, which seems like a lifetime ago now, we set a challenge for young bankers designed to test their capacity to generate new ideas, drive innovation, and deliver sustainable growth. We asked them to tell us about an idea they could implement in their organisation to improve outcomes for customers, colleagues, and communities. An idea that reflected their vision for the future of banking, consistent with the UN principles for responsible banking. We couldn't have known when we launched this year's competition how much our world was going to change and how relevant our focus on sustainable growth, green finance and responsible banking would be. In fact, they're more important now than ever before as we build back businesses, communities and lives impacted by COVID-19, whilst continuing to meet the short and long-term challenges of the climate emergency. And that remains our greatest global and collective challenge. But the pandemic has shown how vulnerable so many individuals, businesses and communities are to health and economic shocks, and has underlined the importance of sustainable economic development where the benefits of growth are widely shared. Banking and finance will, and I'm sure must, play a leading role in building back better, and the UN principles for responsible banking provide a helpful and supportive framework for aligning the strategy, operations and activities of banks with sustainable goals. Leading a socially just, low-carbon transition is quite a responsibility for banks and bankers. It's also an amazing opportunity, both commercially, but more importantly, to demonstrate the positive social and moral purpose and power of what we do as banks and bankers. And if you're in any doubt that we're not up for that challenge, just wait until you hear from our 4 finalists today. Let me introduce them to you. Our Young Banker of the Year 2020 finalists, in the order they will present, are firstly, Charles Collis. Charles is originally from Sydney in Australia and currently Global Commercial Banking Strategy graduate at HSBC in London. Hello and morning, Charles. How are you?
Thank you. And yourself, Simon?
Very well, thanks. And we have Matt Jennings, Associate Director, Commercial Growth and Acquisition Funding at Allied Irish Bank, but more importantly, a new father. Congratulations, Matt, and hope you had a good night's sleep.
I'm not sure about the night's sleep, but thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Tippi Malgui, a Commercial Banking Executive at Arbuthnot Latham & Co. in Manchester. Hello, good morning, Tippi.
Good morning, Simon. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And Anna Gemelli, originally from Albania and a business manager in the Barclays Global Corporate Bank in London. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning, Simon. Morning, everyone.
Hello. Now, I've had the great privilege of following Charles, Matt, Tippi and Anna's journeys through the competition this year, and I know you'll be blown away by their ideas, enthusiasm and personalities. We've assembled a real A-team for our final this year. Our first ever finalists from Albania and Australia, and our first ever finalists from AIB and Arbuthnot Latham. And we'll hear their presentations in just a moment. First, though, I'm delighted to welcome the Lord Mayor of the City of London, William Russell. In normal years, the Lord Mayor would now be welcoming us to his residence, the Mansion House in the heart of the city, a wonderful stage and setting for our finalists. For obvious reasons, we can't be there in person today, but I'm still very grateful to the Lord Mayor and his team for their continued and kind support of our Young Banker of the Year competition. And so it's with great pleasure I'd like to invite the Lord Mayor to say a few words to formally open our grand final.
My name is William Russell. and I am the 692nd Lord Mayor of the City of London. I'm delighted to join you all, albeit virtually, for the Young Banker of the Year. This is a really special event for each Lord Mayor. Up until very recently, I would spend a third of my time in office visiting our international trading partners. I would be in the Middle East 1 month, Australia the next, and then over to the USA and many other places. But one of the best things about these trips is the business delegation I bring along, made up of the very best UK talent. And the foreign bankers, regulators, and innovators are always keen to meet them and start building new commercial enterprises together. The way I see the people applying to become Young Banker of the Year is that they are my future delegation. Smart, adaptable, and able to deal with complex problems. They showcase the brightest young talent in the banking sector. They are undeniably role models for your colleagues and customers. So congratulations to you all. The competition overall, and this final in particular, is designed to test the ability to generate and develop new ideas. It is especially focused on driving innovation, delivering sustainable growth, and demonstrating customer-focused professionalism. And this year's theme of sustainability has a special significance to me. We have a duty when rebuilding the global economy after the pandemic to build back better, to put new long-term and sustainable financial solutions at the forefront of our plans. I am very proud that the UK is a world leader in sustainable innovation. From launching the Green Finance Institute right here in the city to the Green Finance Strategy, we are at the forefront of this necessary new wave. And it is cheering to see the fantastic award focused on this innovation. I see it as a very public demonstration of the future of socially purposeful banking, built by the very best the UK has to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And now on with our final. For those of you who've joined us in previous years, you may have noticed a few small differences. Firstly, we're not actually at the Mansion House this year. So if any of our regular guests have turned up and are banging on the door outside trying to get in, I'm very sorry. And of course, that means we won't have the chance this year to catch up with old friends and colleagues in person, but I very much hope that will change soon. And finally, it means that I'm afraid you'll need to bring your own canapes and champagne this year, although if you're watching us live at lunchtime in the UK, then perhaps sandwiches and a soft drink might be more appropriate. Some things remain unchanged though, above all the exciting, innovative and inspiring ideas and presentations from our 4 finalists, Anna, Charles, Matt and Tippi, our panel of distinguished judges and audience participation. So here's how our final will run. I will shortly introduce our first finalist, Charles Collis, who has 10 minutes to present his idea to our judges and to you, our audience. This year, our finalists have pre-recorded their presentations just to try and avoid any technical problems during our live broadcast. But Charles, Matt, Tippi and Anna will join us live though, and after each presentation, there'll be 10 minutes for live questions from our judges and also a question from you, our audience. Please send your questions to me to ask on your behalf to our finalists, and here's how you do that. Go to slido.com on your phone, tablet or computer. Type in 1876 to the event code box and you can then submit your question. You might want to open Slido now so you're ready to send in your question when the presentations begin in just a few minutes. A week ago though, our finalists met, presented to and discussed their ideas with our distinguished panel of judges to give the judges a chance to digest, discuss and deliberate in more detail than would be possible during our live broadcast. So let us now meet our judges, and to introduce them to you, please welcome the President of the Chartered Banker Institute, the Chair of our Young Banker Judging Panel, and given his wisdom, expertise and genuine musical virtuosity, the very Len Goodman of our Young Banker Final, Mr. Bill McCall.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. I should say thank you for that build-up. It is, in strictly speaking terms, I should perhaps be paying the compliment back by giving you 7 out of 10. And for those of you watching globally and wondering what we're talking about, of course, it relates to the UK television programme Strictly Come Dancing. You may not have come across this before. It's Dancing with the Stars and other names in other territories. You may want to, if you have a spare moment, check it out on YouTube and understand what the British do often on a Saturday evening when there is nothing better to do. Anyway, let's move on to the more serious and substantive point of what I'm here to do, and that's to introduce our esteemed panel. As Simon said, I'm Bill McCall, and I'm the current president of the Chartered Banker Institute. I am delighted today to introduce Dame Susan Rice as one of our fellow judges. Susan is chair of the UK's Banking Standards Board and the former chair of the Chartered Banker Professional Standards Board. She was previously chief executive and then chair of Lloyds TSB Scotland plc and was a non-executive director at the Bank of England for 7 years. We also have Sir Roger Gifford, chairman of the Green Finance Institute, a former Lord Mayor of London, and he lived in that mansion house for a period of time. And he is, of course, an honorary fellow of our Chartered Banker Institute. Now, sparing his blushes, Sir Roger now describes himself as a senior banker at the Swedish bank SEB, having started his career in banking in the 1970s. He was chair of the London Green Finance Initiative, referred to by the Lord Mayor of London, and that was launched in 2016. Also, he was that Lord Mayor of London in 2012-2013. Also joining us is Karina Robinson. Karina's day job is Chief Executive of Robinson Hambro, a C-level advisory and board search boutique, and is also the master of the Worshipful Company of International Bankers, one of the influential City of London livery companies. Now, prior to Robinson Hambro, Karina had a 30-year career, hard to believe, Karina, as a senior journalist covering international finance and politics. She was senior editor of the Financial Times, The Banker magazine, and the International Herald Tribune's banking columnist, and a political and economic correspondent at Bloomberg. And now to Simone Dettling. Simone leads the banking team at the United Nations Environment Finance Initiative, a global partnership between the United Nations and more than 240 banks, investors, and insurers. Formerly, Simone managed the German government emerging markets dialogue on green finance, so can quite rightly describe herself as a green finance expert. Our thanks to all 4 of them for their time and consideration for this competition. So Simon, back to you.
Thank you, Bill. Well, our judges have the difficult task of choosing the winner of the Young Banker of the Year 2020 competition, but don't think that you, our audience, can just sit back, watch and relax, though. We need you to get involved too, and would like you to choose the winner of the audience prize, the finalist who, in your opinion, delivered the best presentation today. And I'll share details of how you can do that after all 4 finalists have presented. And of course, we would like you to put your questions to our 4 finalists too. Then we're just about to begin our first presentation. So as a reminder, to do that, go to slido.com and use the event code 1876. Okay, that's the preliminaries over and it's time to go. It is now my very great pleasure and privilege to welcome our first finalist today, Charles Collis.
A more sustainable and socially conscious future is bearing down upon the global economy and, by association, every business that operates within it. With this comes an obligation, but more importantly, an opportunity for financial services companies like HSBC. They must act now to support their commercial clients in adapting to this rapidly shifting economy. If not, SMEs across the UK are at risk of having vastly outdated business models that will leave them exposed to the risks brought about by climate change, an enhanced collective social consciousness, and an increasingly regulated global economy. Whilst the market for measuring a company's adoption of environmentally and socially acceptable practices is still in its infancy, a widely accepted metric that has recently gained significant notoriety is that of the ESG score, or Environmental, Social and Governance Score. ESG score is a composite measure of the performance of a company against a number of qualitative and quantitative metrics that typically mirror either the 17 themes named in the UN Sustainable Development Goals or the 10 principles of the UN Global Impact. For any company, there are many benefits of having a reliable ESG score. For example, an ESG score can act as a signaling tool, which can open up access to financial capital, such as commercial green loans that would previously have been closed owing to potential greenwashing concerns or a lack of information surrounding the company's ESG alignment. It can also act as a gateway to accessing the alternative financial products and services that coincide with improving ESG-related factors, and can act as the perfect catalyst for shaping an SME's ESG program. The proliferation of ESG scoring has exposed a number of shortfalls in the market. Firstly, the ESG scoring market is unregulated and lacks appropriate standardization. What this has resulted in is what you will see here. Research compiled by the MIT Sloan School of Management, which shows the lack of correlation between the ESG ratings of the same companies provided by the market's biggest ESG ratings agencies, with a value of 1 being representative of perfect correlation. Take, for example, KLD and Asset4, where the correlation between the scores they provided for the same companies was less than 0.5. This lack of standardization is only exacerbated by the way the ratings are presented, which, as you can see on the table, is alarmingly inconsistent across the market. Secondly, all of the aforementioned ratings agencies rely solely on publicly available data, which, for smaller companies with no enforceable disclosure requirements, is often hard to track down and source in an efficient way. Lastly, ESG scoring is complex and heavily geared towards assessing the ESG alignment of large corporations and multinationals. Take the MSCI's ESG score, which distills more than 1,000 data points to create its score. This complexity and focus on larger corporations points towards the opportunity for HSBC. For the 5.9 million SMEs in the UK that employ 60% of the total workforce and contribute 52% of the annual turnover to the UK economy, a large proportion of which are customers at HSBC, the ability to obtain a reliable ESG score is close to impossible, even when considering the clear benefits such a score can provide. This is where Shift comes in. The premise is simple. An ESG scoring app for HSBC's SMEs. A simple, reliable way for SMEs to source an objective perspective on their current alignment to ESG-related factors and find a partner that will support them on their journey towards a more sustainably and socially aligned future. The app itself will have 2 main functions, which will serve as its core product offering. The first is the ESG score. The ESG score provided by Shift will leverage HSBC's unique access to a wealth of internal data on their SMEs, such as supply chain data, KYC and onboarding data, and customer demographics, and pair this with the traditional sources of alternative ESG data that are publicly available. Outside of this, the app will have an added functionality, which allows the SME to provide additional information which they feel will materially impact their score, but has not yet been made available. For example, a corporate social responsibility report that has not been disclosed publicly. This functionality will be critically important to the success of Shift, given that many of the data points that traditionally constitute an ESG score, principally under the social and governance pillars, are not widely available for many SMEs. All of this data will then be compiled through a proprietary scoring methodology that will take the form of a relative weighted sum of the data inputs to provide a reliable, data-driven, and easy to access ESG score for our SMEs. The second key feature of the app will center around transition risk advice. Having received their ESG score, the SME will be able to deep dive into this score, investigating areas where they've underperformed and receive advice on how to improve. This can include advice such as switching to a more sustainable downstream manufacturer, implementing better employee benefit plans, and improving their accounting practices. This advice will also act as a streamlined channel for SMEs to gain access to other products and services that HSBC can offer to support them on their transition towards a more environmentally and socially conscious future. For example, green loans, sustainability-linked loans, and supply chain optimization instruction. Shift will standardize ESG scoring for SMEs, thereby simplifying and accelerating their transition towards an ESG-aligned future. There are, to be expected, a few challenges that will arise with the implementation of Shift, and I would like to take the time now to address 3 of these. The lack of available data on SMEs means that traditional ESG scoring methodologies would not work for these businesses. For example, many do not publicly report on their CO2 emissions, a metric which is used as an input by many ESG ratings agencies. As such, the greatest investment opportunity in designing the functionality provided by Shift would be in developing the proprietary ESG scoring methodology. This methodology would be built to accommodate the relative simplicity of many SMEs and would not rely on, for example, complex corporate governance data to produce its score. Instead, scoring SMEs only against the criteria that are directly relevant to both their maturity and industry. The second noticeable challenge is app saturation. Introducing another app into the market means that Shift would be in direct competition for downloads with HSBC's other core banking apps for SMEs. To address this, I'm advocating that the functionality provided by Shift be developed so that it can be seamlessly integrated into HSBC's existing digital channel, so that the customer need not download the app to get a score or receive advice. The last challenge I'd like to address is COVID-19. The debate currently circulating in the global economy is whether or not COVID-19 will add impetus to the shift towards a sustainable future, or whether both short-term and long-term cash flow concerns will far outweigh the desire to become a more sustainable and consciously focused business. Luckily, many leaders in this space, including Robert King, Head of Sustainable Finance for HSBC UK, are advocating that the rebuilding phase post-COVID-19 lockdown is the perfect time for companies to begin this transition. Such high-profile and targeted advocacy is the perfect starting point in addressing this challenge. I've considered the rollout across 3 key phases, each of which includes a number of milestones. Key milestones within this phase would center around the accurate and detailed mapping of the available data landscape and what data we have on our SMEs. The development phase would not only include the build of the app itself, but the development of the proprietary scoring methodology, having built upon our mapped data landscape. An incremental rollout of the app, most likely starting with a pilot of the larger end of the SME spectrum, is key to success. Iterative technological rollout would allow the Shift team to constantly improve the app's core functionality to better service the needs of the client. In considering the costs of such an iterative rollout, by extrapolating from comparable app developments within the industry, whilst also factoring in the added requirement to first map the data universe, the build and pilot rollout of Shift could be achieved at a cost of approximately $250,000 to $500,000. The transition towards an ESG-aligned future is becoming an unavoidable reality for many of our SMEs. Having a reliable ESG score paired with robust transition risk advice will act as the gateway to accessing flows of sustainable and socially attuned capital, and will provide the toolkit necessary to shape their approach to transition risk mitigation and sustainable transformation. Shift will act as the catalyst and the support that our SMEs need to grow into their potential. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Charles, for getting the competition off to a great start. What a great presentation and a great idea. Yeah, I've been monitoring kind of questions from the audience, and one theme that's coming up is about the size of SMEs, and in particular, what would this be relevant to very small and micro businesses, or are you targeting this at sort of more the medium-sized SMEs?
Thanks for the question, Simon. And I think the key is that the SME spectrum, as has rightly been pointed out by the audience, is such a broad spectrum of companies, and which is why when I've considered the implementation and the rollout of Shift, we'd start with the pilot of the larger end of the SME spectrum, because that's probably where we'd see the easiest integration. And you'd then, as we move on, you'd move throughout the rest of the spectrum. You'd have to adapt the way that the methodology is approached for the different sized companies. But yes, the intention would be to cover the entire SME spectrum. That's the goal. It'd be incremental to get there.
Great. Well, that was great to have that sense of ambition, I think. And now to our judges. So if I could hand over to Bill McCall and the judging panel, please.
Thanks, Simon. So, Charles, thank you very much indeed for your time again today. Susan, if I can turn to you first, would you like to raise a question with Charles?
Yes, thanks very much, Bill. Charles, your passion for the importance and impact of ESG shines through in your presentation, so thank you for that. So I'm interested in the uptake of your app. To what extent do you think most businesses are ready for it? Or do you think a number of them will need to be educated to the need that you're hoping to fulfill? And if so, how do you go about that?
Thank you for the question, Susan. And I think you're correct in saying that not all the businesses are ready for that, which is why part and parcel of what Shift needs to be successful is relying on the frontline relationship managers that we have at HSBC, because the relationship we have with our clients, and that being managed through the relationship managers, is key to educating and upskilling our customers on the benefits behind having an ESG score. So being able to push out the benefits through those challenges and relying on our relationship managers to do so would be key to Shift's success.
Roger, I wonder if you would like to take that on with Charles.
Yes, thanks very much, Charles. Really interesting presentation. I love this idea. It's firing the imagination. I had a question really about if, or maybe when, this becomes a really successful tool. When it does, do you see this as a competitive tool for HSBC, or do you think it's technology that you would imagine be shared with the whole market? Secondly, it has international ramifications as well as national. Would you see this as being an international product as well as national? Do you think it could cross borders?
Definitely. Thank you for both your questions, Roger. I think in addressing your first question, no, I don't think there's any reason why HSBC would need to hoard this sort of technology. I think it's an obligation that we have to the industry as a whole to share best practice with everybody so that the industry itself can move towards a more sustainable future. It's not going to benefit anybody if we're just hiding this away and keeping it just for the customers that we have. On your second question, I think yes, one of the key things about HSBC is its presence internationally and being able to leverage that and use the ESG score to breach those borders and have everybody and all the customers that we serve across the globe on an equal platting and an equal footing is perfect.
Thank you.
Simon, back to you for our next finalist.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, judges, for your questions. And yeah, most of all, thank you, Charles, for getting the 2020 Young Banker of the Year final off to a fantastic start. You can relax and watch the other presentations now, hopefully with a glass of something, or at least a coffee. Thank you again.
Yeah.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome our second finalist tonight, Matt Jennings.
My name is Matt Jennings, and thank you for the opportunity to present my Aib Green Spaces proposal to you. I am delighted to be presenting to you because this is the topic that I am genuinely passionate about. My proposal has been built around the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, which were introduced to help banks align their business strategies with society's goals. The principles also provide a framework for a sustainable banking system that delivers economic growth whilst actively reducing our impact on the environment. The UN has warned that the window to act on climate change is closing. a statement echoed by Sir David Attenborough when he recently said that this is an urgent problem that has to be solved. And what is more is that we know how to do it. That's the paradoxical thing, that we are refusing to take steps that we know have to be taken. As an industry, I believe that we should be held accountable for the impact that we have on climate change and be able to demonstrate our progress in moving towards a low carbon economy. When the Young Bank of the Year competition was launched in January, we could not have imagined that I'd be sat at home in a suit presenting this proposal to you. The world has been rocked by the COVID-19 pandemic and has devastated economies and communities globally. As we slowly turn our attention towards recovery planning, we must consider the opportunity to build back better by pairing economic recovery with climate change action. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to collectively design and build a better future together. At AIB, we want to be part of this process, and I believe that we are uniquely placed to work collaboratively with our customers and local communities to create spaces and promote projects that reflect the shared vision of a sustainable future. I am proposing that AIB transforms the locations from where we operate into spaces for positive environmental change and sustainable growth. This will be achieved through 4 key initiatives. The first is called Aib Green Spaces, which will see us transform redundant outside office space into urban green sites, including rooftop gardens, allotments, and beekeeping sites. These spaces are designed to be unique and inclusive settings where we can hold conversations with customers and communities about how we can build a more sustainable future together. As part of these conversations, I am proposing that we will discuss the role that green funding can play in supporting their green projects. The next 2 initiatives are more internally driven and focus on how we'll convert traditional indoor office space into modern green working environments. This will be achieved in 2 ways. The first, by incorporating natural elements and plant life into the design of our offices, a concept known as biophilic design. And the second, by partnering with responsible suppliers to create a framework that will facilitate green ways of working and support the rollout of AIB Green Spaces in an environmentally conscious way. I believe that we can create the most value from this proposal when the 4 initiatives interact together to drive 5 key benefits. By setting up AIB Green Spaces, we'll be redefining how city landscapes and redundant spaces can be used to promote biodiversity and support local ecosystems in urban settings. By redesigning our office spaces and by partnering with responsible suppliers, we'll be supporting green ways of working that will reduce our carbon footprint and improve staff well-being. Staff well-being isn't a particularly obvious benefit, but it does highlight the wide-reaching outcomes of my proposal. Interestingly, scientific research has shown that incorporating biophilic design into offices supports creative and productive thinking whilst reducing stress and anxiety in the workplace. We'll be creating spaces that are designed to reconnect us to nature and that keep sustainability at the forefront of our decision-making. We will invite community groups, schools, not-for-profit organisations and our business customers to experience AIB Green Spaces. Since the semi-final, I have already begun conversations with these groups, and I am confident that through AIB Green Spaces, we can continue to share knowledge as well as information about policy and procedures. When speaking to the CEO of the Eden Project, he commented that transforming redundant spaces really does give people a sense of joy and remind them about the natural world through spaces that weren't actually really doing anything before. They were just there. By inviting these groups to experience our green spaces, we can inspire them to pursue their own green projects, and where possible, we will set up partnerships and joint ventures with them to support these. This is something that we are actively pursuing. In some instances, it may be appropriate that the bank finances these projects. AIB Green Spaces have been deliberately designed to be places where we can educate and inform our customers and communities about the important role that finance can play in accelerating our transition to a low-carbon economy, and that green funding is available to finance green initiatives. These spaces will be inclusive settings where we can listen to customers and colleagues about their experiences of green finance and where they can help shape the direction of travel for these products. They have already highlighted to me that they want to be involved in the design of innovative, evolving and disruptive green finance products that deliver science-based results and that are accessible to all. By creating spaces for these conversations to take place, we will be extending the knowledge of green finance to our entire customer base and opening up access to green funding. In turn, we will be supporting community and corporate-led climate change action that extends beyond the local to the global. I'm confident that given the right backing, resources and collaboration across the bank, that this proposal has the potential to be rolled out at scale. Following the semi-final, I developed a survey that was sent to all UK staff to gauge levels of support for my proposal. 99% of respondents backed the rollout of outdoor green sites, and they confirmed that they would use these to build relationships with customers and improve their own well-being. Importantly, customers have also confirmed that the implementation of Aib Green Spaces would reinforce our position as their banking partner of choice. One of the most exciting parts so far has been planning how we can deliver one of the first Aib Green Spaces. Together with our Head of Properties and Facilities in the UK, we have worked through our property portfolio and have identified specific sites that are of particular interest to us because they are wholly owned and operated by Aib. And importantly, there is plenty of potential to convert unutilised outside space. Another key consideration has been the cost analysis of setting up and maintaining these green sites. It is important to call out that urban green space projects come in almost limitless varieties and can be low cost, low maintenance. For example, establishing an apiary of beehives on a rooftop could cost as little as £500, which means that we will have the ability to vary the scale of these rollouts. I discussed this with our Chief Sustainability Officer when working through how Aib Green Spaces would look and feel in practice. I appreciate that it may transpire that some locations cannot host a green space. In these instances, we have a really positive alternative, which is to sponsor a local school, charity or club to host the space on our behalf. And since the semi-final, I've explored this option with a school in West London, and they have confirmed that they'd be supportive of hosting a green space. Given the current climate, the initial promotion and launch of our green sites could be hosted online to minimise any potential health risks. If that is the case, then we must see this as an opportunity to invite customers and communities to assist in the design of our online offering so that it is tailored, relevant and meaningful in supporting their green initiatives and enables us to share information about green funding. Focusing more on inside workspaces, 88% of staff agreed or strongly agreed that Aib should back the rollout of biophilic design at our offices. I am currently in discussions with members of our UK Executive Committee about securing a budget to include green working spaces into the planned redevelopment of our head office in Belfast. This would be Aib UK's first building to incorporate biophilic design, and I've been working with the project manager and team of architects to scope out and deliver this. The designs look great. The COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on how office space can be used safely must also be considered. Social distancing guidelines have significantly reduced staff capacity at our offices. Because of this, I've developed a guide that has been shared with all staff on how they can incorporate biophilic design into their home workspaces. 75% of staff confirmed that they were likely or very likely to do so. In this way, I believe that my proposal can continue to promote staff well-being whilst they're working remotely. Ultimately, in order for this proposal to be a success, we must continue to share knowledge internally about green finance so that all staff can promote these products to our customers and communities. This is something that the bank is working towards, and I believe that this proposal will accelerate. We have made some fantastic steps forward in rolling out Aib Green Spaces, and I am proud that we are creating the environments needed to bring sustainability to the forefront of Aib's culture, strategic thinking, and future planning. I am excited by the opportunity that this proposal presents, but I am also conscious that we must act now if we want to build a more sustainable future together. Thank you.
Matt, thank you very much, and I am looking forward to hopefully being a user of a green space fairly soon when we can get back to city centres and office working, as there's an Aib office not too far from my office at the Institute in Edinburgh. So thank you for a great presentation. We've had quite a few questions through on the theme of how will the proposal or how relevant is the proposal in a COVID-19 and hybrid working world, but of course you dealt with that in your presentation very well. So one of the other questions that came through is, what are the real benefits to AIB beyond the marketing element? What's the commercial aspect in this for the bank?
Sure. Well, I suppose from a commercial perspective, one of the big things which we've tried to get across within the presentation is that we're trying to open up access to green funding. And actually, green funding itself, of course, has two benefits. The first, it is a banking product, and therefore there is a commercial return for the bank. But also the incredible work that can come out of banking, of using green finance products as well, and the impact that you have on the environment. So the commercial returns are there, and they are linked to green finance products, and you do obviously get the upside of the environmental piece as well. I think also from a commercial perspective for the bank, we were a founding signatory of the UN Principles. We were founding signatory of the UN Principles of Responsible Banking. So there is obviously a market sentiment, a piece that we've gone to the market and we've said, actually, we're really behind this, and actually we can't move away from that. We've dedicated ourselves to moving towards a more sustainable system, and we need to deliver that. We also signed a low carbon pledge in 2018 to halve our carbon emissions within the bank by 2030. So we can't make those sorts of sentiments or statements to the market and then not deliver that. So I think from a commercial perspective, you get the upside from the green finance, of course, and also we need to stand behind what we've actually said to the market as well.
Great, thank you very much. And now can I hand over to Bill and our judging panel, please? Bill, over to you.
Simon, thanks, Matt. We do have a couple of questions. Karina, would you like to kick us off, please?
Absolutely. Matt, I was incredibly impressed by that. And one of the things that really fascinated me is innovation is one thing, but the other part of innovation is execution. And as a young banker, getting the eye of the top people and having them buy into what you're doing. I mean, you started this, I believe you initiated this in January, and look where you are now. What are the two lessons you would like to share with us about how you managed to get the input of senior management to make this happen?
So I think the first thing is that, luckily enough, I work for an organisation where the people that have the skills and the passion to really drive the sustainability agenda forward. When I did my staff survey, I believe it was 98% of people said that actually they would change their daily behaviours in order to fit with AIB sustainability agenda. So it's about connecting with the people within the organisation, understanding where their skills lie, picking up the phone and being brave about it, because they're there to help you and they're there to also bring this agenda forward as well. So I think that's the main learning. Make sure that you leverage off of the people within the bank itself. And the second learning, which I touched on there, be brave as well. People really do want to hear what young bankers are thinking and their ideas. And actually, hopefully that I've been able to show the value within this proposal, and we'll be able to see it implemented in a number of different ways. So use the people around you and be brave.
Thank you.
Simone, I'm sure with your perspective, this is music to your ears. Anything you'd like to raise with Matt?
Absolutely. No, it sounds fantastic. It's a very interesting proposal. And Matt, it's quite interesting to hear the connections you see to culture and influencing people's decision making. I would like to tease out a little bit more here your theory of change. So what makes you confident that the change in surroundings will trigger the change in behavior and how decisions are made? And what is the ultimate impact you expect with regards to AIB's business, and then what share of it will be sustainable?
So, sorry, I didn't actually pick up on the last bit of the question, but the first bit of the question in terms of what we can do, or why I think that this can really be rolled out at scale and have a real impact, is actually a point to a report that AIB did recently, which was our Sustainability Index report. And that was all about understanding consumers' behaviours, beliefs and intentions around sustainability. And within that report, what it showed is that 60% of consumers actually believe that banks do need to play a fundamental role in our fight against climate change. And it also showed that they were really willing, and there was a strong interest to receive information about sustainability from their banks as well. So just from that report itself, it does show that out there people are willing and willing to listen and actually adopt more sustainable ways of living. So I think that's really important. Also, I think that what else is important is that if people want to make lifestyle changes, then they have to have access to resources and knowledge in order to do so. So that's where Aib Green Spaces will really come to the forefront, in that we will invite people to be able to talk through the financial benefits of living more sustainably, for example. We'll give them proof that the changes that they're making are having an impact on the environment, and also allow them access to industry experts so they have the support and guidance needed as well. And I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the second bit of the question, please.
The second bit, and I hope I'm well audible, was about if you had any estimate or idea of the impact you expect in terms of, you know, how much this is going to change AIB's
Sure.
business, what you expect in terms of growth in selling green products, etc.
Sure. So I suppose in terms of the impact, when I spoke to the CEO of the Eden Project, and I was truly grateful for that opportunity, he described global as a series of localities, and I think that that's really lovely in the way that he's presented that. And actually, if we want to have global change, then we have to start right at the beginning, which is in our office spaces, you know, the spaces that we can control and make that change within. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going with on that one. And then, sorry, the last bit of the question, apologies, for AIB.
I think, Matt, where we're trying to get to is this sort of commercial benefit, but perhaps that's challenging you to have a look at the bank's P&L.
Well,
I think we'll leave that there if we may. Matt, thank you very much indeed for all the work that you've put in to get to this point. Congratulations making the final. Simon,
thank you.
Back to you.
Great, thank you, Bill, and yes, thank you, Matt. Again, you know, you have a 2-week-old daughter, Penny Rose. I know she'll be very proud, kind of watching back to that when she's a little bit older and can understand. And by that stage, hopefully there'll be a whole range of green spaces across the UK that she and her friends can use as well. So thank you very much indeed. Now, you can relax a bit now.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to welcome our third finalist, Tippi Malgui.
Hello, my name is Tippi Malgui from the commercial banking team at Arbuthnot Latham in Manchester, and my presentation is titled Banking the Most Vulnerable, a bespoke financial solution for serious injury protected persons. You will note as we go along that the presentation also covers individuals with severe learning disabilities and other medical conditions. I just wasn't able to fit all of that within the header. To aid with setting the tone, I've prepared a short animation to provide you some context. This is Toby. Toby is 10 and loves playing football. One of his favourite pastimes is watching and supporting his local team at the town stadium with mum and dad. Toby would like to become a professional goalkeeper and play for his local team when he grows up. One day, on his walk back from school, Toby was struck by an uninsured driver who had lost control of his vehicle and mounted the pavement Toby was walking on. Toby was in hospital a long time. When he finally came out, he was given a wheelchair as the accident had affected his spine and Toby could no longer play football the way he had always dreamt about. This is Brenda. Brenda's favourite time of the year is Christmas, as her daughter and grandchildren always come to visit from Australia. Every year, Brenda looks forward to Christmas as she has no other family, and this is the one time each year she has a full house. Although Brenda's always lived in the area, she had on many occasions forgotten the way back home from the local shop. On her last trip to the doctors, Brenda could not remember the names of her grandchildren. Her doctor did some tests, and Brenda was diagnosed with stage 5 Alzheimer's. This is Olivia. Olivia is a specialist lawyer known as the deputy. Olivia is appointed by a court known as the Court of Protection to protect people like Toby and Brenda who have suffered serious injury or have psychological medical conditions. These protected individuals are known as protected parties. Olivia's job as a deputy is to act in the best interest of Toby and Brenda by facilitating access to any due compensation medical care and rehabilitation. Unfortunately, deputies like Olivia struggle to find banking partners that understand this sector and are willing to support the bespoke and time-intensive requirements of this industry. Currently, there's a gap between the serious injury financial service requirements and what we, the banking industry, provide. I believe that we, as bankers, have an obligation to target and deliver focused banking solutions to this sector. To reiterate the main point from the visual, there is a dearth of targeted banking solutions for this sector, and with a recent survey estimating that there are over 7 million people living with a disability in the UK, this brings to fore the enormity and scale of this problem. To alleviate this issue, my proposal is called the Serious Injury Lifecare Account, aka the Silk account. Whilst I've labelled this an account, this is way more than that, as it combines my bank's, Arbuthnot Latham's, core banking proposition of private banking, commercial banking, wealth planning and investment management. The aim is for the Silk account to provide a one-stop solution for all quarter protection banking needs by zeroing in and servicing the quarter protection touchpoints, namely the deputy, the protected party and any associated persons like carers and close family members. The diagram shows the Silk account support group and the targeted value proposition I am seeking to offer. For the deputies, they benefit from consolidation and having all their protected party clientele in one place. There will be the capability to segregate funds per function for individual protected persons. For example, there could be a main current account plus an additional care home servicing account, for instance. Also, there will be the option for a personal liberty card to provide independence funds for protected persons that may have sufficient capacity to handle some monies independently. Carers and close family members are equally as important to the protected person as the deputy for overall rehabilitation, and the Silk account supports them with an option for a carer's expenses card account to cater for any day-to-day costs. The Silk account will incorporate a Lifecare plan calculator which aims to help the deputy and protected person forecast any future medical costs. An example could be an 8-year-old spinal injury person who may have had a spinal fusion, but a follow-up procedure may be required once adolescence, and these costs need to be forecast. Finally, any long-term or surplus funds will be signposted to the bank's discretionary investment management service, which will look to invest these funds in bespoke asset portfolios. To further illustrate the Silk account functionality, I have created a web page model to show the account in action. The deputy will log into the Silk account as you would any normal online banking enabled account. The Quarter Protection Accounts landing page will display all the protected party accounts under the deputy's stewardship. In this example, we have the deputy, Eve Moneypenny of Golden Eye Law Limited, who has 5 protected persons under her care, namely James Bond, Nancy Drew, Jack Ryan, etc., all with total balances shared across a number of accounts. Clicking on James Bond's account takes us to his protected party dashboard, which shows all of James's segregated funds with a main current account, a care home service account, a personal liberty card, plus a carer's expenses card all in play. We can also see that James Bond has some long-term funds invested in a bespoke asset under management portfolio. The investment management portfolio view shows us the allocation of James's invested funds per asset class, and the idea is that the deputy will be able to drill down into any of these investment slices for a detailed view of the securities. To complete the Silk account is the Lifecare plan calculator, which aims to help forecast the future cost of care. I've modelled it as a questionnaire that will take general info, care requirements, all income and expenditure, and any major future events like surgery, chemotherapy, etc., which is then fed into our wealth planning software workflow that then gives a basic verdict and, most importantly, signpost to the dedicated wealth planner for tailored advice. Like everything worth doing, there will be challenges, mainly because I'm seeking to combine multiple banking platforms into one. The solution here is that the Silk account will sit on a CRM platform, which will have reciprocal feeds into the deferring platforms. Additionally, regulatory-wise, in addition to FCA compliance rules, enhanced due diligence and vulnerable client policies, there is also the SRA, Solicitors Regulatory Authority rules to contend with. Fortunately, banks and solicitors have a good history of mutual compliance and cooperation, so continued dialogue and regular training is key here. So why do it? It's not often that we, as bankers, get an opportunity to impact on life-changing circumstances, and this is exactly what this is. Yes, the primary aim of the Silk account is to serve as a one-stop solution for quarter protection needs, but it can also be a prototype for other banks to offer solutions in this sector. From a balance sheet and P&L perspective, this sector services tens of thousands of affected individuals, turning over billions of pounds annually. However, behind all of this are vulnerable individuals who have suffered life-changing circumstances, and the Silk account offers a solution to aid them on their rehabilitation journey. The Principles for Responsible Banking aims to help the banking industry make a positive contribution to society. The Silk account meets this brief by aligning with this vulnerable sector, partnering with the stakeholders, and providing solutions that future-proofs clients' and customers' funds, enabling prosperity. In summary, and to conclude, I have highlighted how deputies struggle to find banking partners to service their seriously injured clientele. I have shown how the Silk account aims to solve this by offering full banking functionality for the deputy, protected party, carers and close family members, with added Lifecare planning and investment management solutions to future-proof their funds. The end product is a banking solution for seriously injured people facing life-changing challenges in one of the most vulnerable times of their lives. Thank you.
Tippi, hello again. Thank you so much. What a fascinating idea and presentation. There's been I think it really seems to have struck a chord with the audience, as it has with me as well. Not least because our son is a goalkeeper. So I guess the kind of thoughts from the audience are, and you touched on this a little bit in the presentation, but maybe you could just flesh this out a bit more, is while the benefits to kind of customers and their carers are clear, how would this work commercially for your bank or for other banks? Is the segment big enough, and how would the bank generate an acceptable return?
All right, thank you for that. That's a really good question, Simon. So I think I mentioned this in the presentation. There are about 7 million people living with a disability in the UK. So that in itself shows that there is a big there's a big number of individuals that would need this product. In addition to that, annually you get there are about 25,000 people that have road traffic accidents every year, and also about 11,000 people suffer from clinical injuries and clinical negligence issues annually. So that in itself shows that there's a big market for this. But the main point is that all the services and all these individuals, people living with serious injury and people living with disabilities, they struggle from having banking partners that will support them with services. And most times we, the banks, we tend to pigeonhole them into products that only just serve our purposes, and we don't look at it from their perspective. So having the Silk account offer the current accounts, the private banking service, and also including the wealth planning and the investment management to future-proof and look after their future whilst also taking care of the current is quite key here.
Great. No, I think that's. I'm sure that's a sentiment that everyone listening in and watching would agree with. Not least our judges. And now it's over to our judges and back to Bill, please.
Simon, thanks very much indeed, and thank you, Tippi. Susan, I could tell from the video this has piqued your interest for sure. So, what would you like to ask Tippi?
Thanks very much, Bill. Tippi, that was a clear and compelling presentation, and I love the name, the Silk account. So you've proposed a new product. You've shown us what it might look like. You've suggested a significant market for it, innovative, addressing the needs of a collective host of customers in a way that's not been done before anywhere. And it can be created at your bank. And quite generously and helpfully, you also point to the fact that this could be something that other banks could do right across the sector. So you've got the customer firmly in your sights, and you've just spoken to that. I want to know how you came to focus on this particular need when no one else has.
Well, from a day-to-day banking side, we work with quite a lot of solicitor firms and charities. So I do have first-hand experience with that. In addition to that, I also serve as a board trustee for a charity based in Manchester. It's called Disabled Living, and we supply, we provide guidance and advice for individuals living with disabilities and the professionals that support them. So firsthand, I see what guidance and advice, or lack of it thereof, affects people that are living with disabilities. We see that on a day-to-day. So I can't cure disabilities. I cannot heal a serious injury. What's within my gift is providing a banking service and providing solutions that could help them and alleviate their healing journey. So that was where this idea came about. And I'm just grateful to be in a place, Aib Green, the bank, that supports this idea and gives me a platform to be able to do my utmost to try and help this subsector.
Thank you.
Karina, you've always applauded innovation. I'm sure you've got something to ask of Tippi at this point.
Absolutely, Bill. I mean, Tippi, I loved it because what you're taking is the complications of our bureaucratic day-to-day lives, dealing with lawyers, and made it much simpler, as simpler as you can make it. What interested me is you talked a lot about the disabilities that happen on the back of accidents, but I noticed in your presentation you do have one lady who suffers from dementia, and that is going to be a huge problem for our society, even larger than it is now. And the cost of care is going to be gigantic. So I wanted to know, how much is that a part of the thinking behind this?
Quite a lot of it, because obviously with people living longer, and also with dementia being an age-related disease, age-related issue, that is something that we've come across quite a lot. And like I said earlier, I work with a charity, Disabled Living, which gives advice and support to individuals living with that. And there is quite a lot of the individuals with dementia that require our services, and which is why I suggested the Lifecare plan calculator, which is part of the Silk account, because what the Lifecare plan calculator offers is the choice of sitting down with a financial advisor or a wealth planner, that will sit down and look at your current position, your current situation, looks at the care you will need in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, just to make sure that regardless of what situation that individual is in, that you would have targeted support and targeted advice that will help you to improve your quality of care as you move on in later life.
Thank you.
Tippi, thank you very much indeed. Congratulations on making the final. Simon, back to you. I think it's a big relief now for Tippi.
I can breathe now. Thank you.
Yes, you can certainly breathe and relax. Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, now it's my great pleasure to introduce our fourth and final finalist, Anna Gemalai from Barclays. Anna.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Gemalai. I'd like to start the presentation today with a personal story. The woman in the picture is Jawaira Tefik Gemalai. She was born in a small village in Berat in Albania. She was orphaned due to war and raised by her relatives, unable to go to school. Her husband taught her basic reading and writing when she was in her early 30s. To my family and I, she is our beloved and late grandmother, a strong pillar for our family who enabled myself and the generation of women that surpassed her to be independent, educated, and able to follow our dreams. To the rest of the world, my grandmother is one of the many faint female voices, one of the many untold stories, one of the many women who unfortunately, despite own potential, were not able to follow their dreams, but definitely broke the mold for their own families and their own communities. Stories like my grandmother may seem far away from home, particularly at a time when we've made such incredible stride for gender equality. And while the latter holds true, according to the World Economic Forum, it would take about 257 years to close the economic gap between male and women at the current pace of progress. That is, in practice, another 10 generations of women. So how can we really explain this? Quite simply, if equality is the goal for all men and women, then equity has to be the means to get us there. Equality ensures that women have the same access of opportunity in comparison to their male counterparts. However, equity actually ensures that females have access to the same means and resources to be equally successful to men. For example, the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s ensured that discrimination on the basis of gender was made illegal. Technically nowadays, a female can apply to be a CEO of a company just as much as a male can. However, statistics show that only 23% of board positions across Forbes 500 companies are occupied by women. Or the Equality Pay Act, which ensures that women were no longer given less favorable terms in terms of pay or employment. However, nowadays, we still have a gender pay gap, which varies among geographies and industries and can range between 17.3% currently in the UK, but in other industries such as investment banking could be much higher, up to 70%. These are just a few examples to show that in order to achieve the progress that we need, gender equality needs to be embedded into business strategy, into daily operations, into important decisions such as a response to the COVID crisis that we are currently experiencing. The recent incredible collaboration between the government and financial institutions in response to the COVID crisis has just shown yet again the intrinsic role that FIs play in the communities that they operate in. In a short space of time, financial institutions have launched new products, have rethought existing processes in order to help their most impacted clients keep their businesses alive. In the same token, FIs are well positioned to equally help their clients understand how social impact and specifically gender equality can help their businesses become more productive, more sustainable, and ultimately more attractive. During a crisis of this magnitude, it has never been more important to build resilient businesses and build back better what this crisis has damaged. I'm therefore proposing a gender equality lending framework which can be adopted by FIs and other lenders to facilitate and incentivize financing with purpose, specifically to enhance gender equality and gender equity. The framework itself is very simple. The use of proceeds do not need to be linked directly to gender equality, which means that the client can use the funds flexibly for general corporate purposes. The cost of funds can be linked to predetermined gender equality objectives. If those objectives are met, then the clients can benefit from a margin saving. Otherwise, there'll be a margin increase. However, any margin savings or increases incurred can be invested back into the agenda, either internally to the FI or the client, or a nominated NGO or charity which focuses on gender equality. In the shorter term, I see this framework applicable to larger international corporate clients, as they will have existing diversity and inclusion departments, ability to track and measure gender data, such as gender pay gap report, or appropriate disclosure requirements to facilitate this. Therefore, this can be used to solidify the business case for the commercial benefits for gender equality, as well as inspire more specific research, more cross-collaboration, which will then enable for this framework to be expanded into medium and smaller companies and other lending products in the medium and longer term. While there is general agreement that gender equality is absolutely the right thing to do from a social justice perspective, I would also like to highlight the economic and commercial benefits to both the lender and the borrower through this framework. From the lender perspective, it will allow them to expand and diversify their lending portfolio by creating a new income stream by simply using a different wrapper on existing products. It will help them identify and attract lower risk borrowers as more sustainable companies not only form more resilient businesses, but this also translates into lower risk in the long term. It will help FIs to strengthen overall sustainability credentials and moreover meet the UN SDG goals, where gender equality forms one of the 17 goals set. This, in conjunction, will help them enhance brand power and reputation, which ultimately will attract new clients. And finally, this framework is deployable quite immediately, as FIs can use existing frontline resource, operation processes, and control environment, meaning there is no additional cost from a resource to launch this framework. From the borrower perspective, it will create competitive advantage and long-term value. Additionally, they are better positioned to weather or address any adverse changes, whether being economic, social, regulatory, or environmental. It will help clients retain existing customers and attract new ones, while being seen a sustainable business or a business that is doing good has definitely become a key customer attraction and retention factor as shown by various surveys. Additionally, it would help them attract and retain best talent by embedding gender equality into business strategy and corporate culture. It will inspire new income lines via gendered product innovation. Quite anecdotally, the conventional seatbelt, for example, is not well fitted to support pregnant women. It is obviously hard to provide solutions when we cannot really see the problem in the first place, and in this instance, quite specific to women. This is where applying gender lens thinking into simple product innovation, even in industries who may not seemingly have anything to do with gender equality, like the automobile industry, can make a big difference and open new avenues. And this is just one example. In order to truly reap the benefits I just mentioned from both the borrower and the lender perspective, 5 key success factors need to be taken into account. Firstly, it's important to link to a comparable and industry benchmark in order to create a platform for sharing best practices. The gender equality objectives need to be measurable and reportable in a transparent manner. Gender equality objectives should cover a broader spectrum. Typically, efforts in the corporate world are very much limited to leadership and the female representation in executive board positions. However, we should consider other avenues such as employability as a whole, entrepreneurship, access to finance, or product innovation. It is also important for the gender equality objectives to be intersectional in nature in order to enhance inclusivity and provide appropriate gender equity across race, cultural background, sexual orientation, or mental health and disability. Finally, it is important to consider that ESG elements are not mutually exclusive. Often sustainability efforts are overshadowed and limited to the environmental element. While this is very important, so is the S component, the social part, which is where typically gender equality would fit. For instance, it is possible to support a female-founded business who produces sanitary products using sustainable materials. Fundamentally, this framework will enable gender equality to be streamlined into existing conversations that lenders and their clients or their clients' clients have every day. This would ultimately debunk the myth that gender equality is a luxury for companies who can seemingly afford to do so, or whose operations are directly linked to the cause. It will help strengthen the understanding that gender equality is not only about social justice, but also economic inclusion. And finally, it will make gender equality a reality for all women. My grandmother and many other women or girls across the world have very little control over key aspects that end up limiting their future, such as where they're born, their cultural background, or their ethnicity. This should no longer be the case. Thank you for watching.
Anna, thank you so much. You had the hardest job in many ways of having to wait until the end and see the other presentations, but it was definitely well worth waiting for. So thank you so much. The question from the audience, on behalf of the audience, and you did touch on this in your presentation, but perhaps you could go into it in a little more detail. It's a highly topical question. Could equality for other groups be included at the outset, depending on the preference and priorities of the client, as opposed to the focus on gender equality?
Thank you, Simon. And I think that's a very fair question. I think I touched upon it, and I mentioned intersectionality, which I think should be key when we talk about equality as a whole, because none of us live single lives. We all are multifaceted individuals. So even when we consider gender, we know it's not just binary men and women, which is why in the incorporation of a framework that enables or incentivizes clients to think about objectives that will ultimately enhance equity, we should think beyond the binary, but also consider race, ethnicity, disability, etc. And it has become clear that without having those clear objectives, intersectional, to cover the broad spectrum, it is quite difficult to expand the conversation beyond simple, for example, C-suite representation. Because if we think about it, although increasing the leadership in the top houses of a company is definitely important when it comes to gender, we have to think that the eligible pool of women for those positions is very diverse in itself, which is where intersectionality has to be key.
Great, thank you. And now to our judges, which I'm pleased to say is a very diverse panel.
Thanks, Simon. Lots to think about. Anna, thank you very much. You can relax and breathe, and it's all over now as far as the stress part is concerned. Roger, you're up to ask Anna anything that you'd like to ask.
Yes, thank you very much, Bill. And I'm having to think very quickly because the audience just asked the question that I was about to ask. So I'm going to ask a very slightly different one, Anna, and thank you very much for a really, really interesting and thought-provoking presentation. Diversity, inclusion, and gender imbalance are top of the agenda for so many of us, and we are all thinking about ways of bringing this balance back better in our businesses. We know it makes business sense, and it's just a matter of how to do it and change often it's attitudes which are embedded in the way people think. On a sustainability agenda, what we've done is we've devised a thing called sustainability linked loans, where the margin is actually increased or even decreased according to certain sustainability standards or levels that are met by an individual company. Do you think you would see similar kind of penalties or even benefits, any margin benefit applicable to companies who met certain internal balance ratios, particularly in gender? Or do you see this more as a matter of whether a bank actually engages with a company or not in terms of their aspirations on gender balance?
Thank you. I think that's a really great point, and I think the concept very much mirrors what we currently are doing with the sustainability linked loans. However, as it was mentioned in my presentation, a lot of our efforts when it comes to sustainability, and bearing in mind that we're still at a time where companies and clients are still defining what that means for their businesses, right? There isn't an international benchmark of what a sustainable business means, but we know that there are 3 elements to the Esg score, and unfortunately, the social element has been overshadowed by the environmental aspect. And I guess this framework just creates an opportunity for gender lens thinking to be embedded into sustainable lending that we have. Because like you said, we know that being a sustainable business, we know that makes sense. It builds up resilience businesses. So the concept of the margin would remain. That creates a window of opportunity for our frontline colleagues to talk to their clients about gender as well as other financing needs in conversations they have day to day. But it also creates a kind of a mechanism to then indicate to the stakeholders that their company is actually committed by way of strategy and business operations into the gender equality cause.
Thank you, Anna. Simone, with the UN perspective, I'm sure this is something that caught your attention. What would you like to ask Anna?
It very much does. And frankly, when we talk about the UN perspective, unfortunately, also the UN is struggling and has been struggling with gender equality internally. And Anna, that's what my question relates to a little bit. I mean, there's a monitoring in many companies, I think, of the relevant ratios, and there is certainly in many also target setting. But that doesn't seem to be enough. What did you come across in your research as the main problems, barriers to achieving gender equality? And how do you think your idea can help tackle those specific problems?
Thank you. Although there's been research, and McKinsey probably provided a more extensive one that clearly shows that companies with a more diverse staff do perform better, the research does not resonate with all clients, but is typically with the very top large big companies, which often benefit from having a D&I a function, and that also shows and research again has shown that those companies do better. But we want to expand the conversation beyond that. And what the vision really here is to mainstream gender equality into business strategy. Ultimately, we want gender equality to be seen as a value-added business-driven decision. We know that from a social justice, as you said, we recognize that equality is the right thing to do, but we are still working on solidifying the business case around why this is also the smart business thing to do. And the female economy alone is potentially the largest emerging market, is twice the size of China and India. So if we were able to close the labor gap, the global GDP would rise by 26%. And in the current pandemic, that's a figure that we definitely cannot ignore. By ensuring that gender lens thinking is incorporated into business strategy, into conversations that our frontline have with clients every day, into whatever product innovation in a financial institution happens, into the way we pick supply chains and ensure that those have, then gender equality all of a sudden does not feel like a luxury or an extra activity that would put strain on resources at a time where clients are thinking about business continuity. This framework creates the opportunity for gender lens thinking and equity to be part of the decisions that businesses make every day.
Anna, thank you so much for your time today. Simon, back to you.
Thank you, Bill, and judges, and yeah, Anna in particular. Thanks for ending some very compelling statistics. You ended that last question with there. Thank you very much indeed. And let me both personally and on behalf of our judges and you, our audience, thank Charles, Matt, Tippi, and Anna. Thank you all for 4 superb presentations. Thank you for 4 compelling ideas reflecting your vision for the future of banking. Thank you for taking part in our competition in very strange and challenging times for us all. And above all, thank you for forgiving or rekindling our faith in the future of banking. And what a future we will have if we simply sit back now and allow the 4 of you to get on with it. And for those senior leaders watching their colleagues today from AIB, Arbuthnot Latham, Barclays and HSBC, I think that's my challenge, our challenge to you. Let's let Charles, Matt, Tippi and Anna get on and put those ideas into practice. Now it's time for our judges to make what I know will be a very difficult and very finely balanced decision. So if I could ask our judging panel now to retire to the remote but luxurious island we've secured for your deliberations, maintaining appropriate social distancing, of course. I'm sure you'll have a lively debate and we'll look forward to hearing the result in about 10 minutes or so. Whilst our judges deliberate, we need to vote ourselves for the audience prize, which, just to remind you, is your chance to vote for the finalists who, in your opinion, delivered the best presentation today. So to vote, you can go back to slido.com, which is where we were adding our questions. Use the same event code 1876 and the poll should be open, and you can then vote for the presenter who you felt gave the most compelling presentation today. Now you have approximately 10 minutes to vote. Please vote only once. And while you're doing that, and whilst our judges are deliberating, you'll be able to watch some highlights from Charles, Matt, Tippi and Anna's presentations, which may help you to decide who to vote for if you haven't decided already. We've also put together some highlights of previous finals and winners too, which will play after you've seen the reprise of today's presentations to whet our appetites for that announcement in just under 10 minutes time. we'd now like to hand over to the highlights, and in about 10 minutes we'll be coming back to hear the result. Please vote now.
A more sustainable and socially conscious future is bearing down upon the global economy and, by association, every business that operates within it. With this comes an obligation, but more importantly, an opportunity for financial services companies like HSBC. They must act now to support their commercial clients in adapting to this rapidly shifting economy. If not, SMEs across the UK are at risk of having vastly outdated business models that will leave them exposed to the risks brought about by climate change, an enhanced collective social consciousness, and an increasingly regulated global economy. Whilst the market for measuring a company's adoption of environmentally and socially acceptable practices is still in its infancy, a widely accepted metric that has recently gained significant notoriety is that of the ESG score, or Environmental, Social and Governance Score. ESG score is a composite measure of the performance of a company against a number of qualitative and quantitative metrics that typically mirror either the 17 themes named in the UN Sustainable Development Goals or the 10 principles of the UN Global Impact. The proliferation of ESG scoring has exposed a number of shortfalls in the market. Firstly, the ESG scoring market is unregulated and lacks appropriate standardization. All of the aforementioned ratings agencies rely solely on publicly available data. Lastly, ESG scoring is complex and heavily geared towards assessing the ESG alignment of large corporations and multinationals. This is where Shift comes in. The premise is simple: an ESG scoring app for HSBC's SMEs. A simple, reliable way for SMEs to source an objective perspective on their current alignment to ESG-related factors. Shift will act as the catalyst and the support that our SMEs need to grow into their potential.
The world has been rocked by the COVID-19 pandemic and has devastated economies and communities globally. As we slowly turn our attention towards recovery planning, we must consider the opportunity to build back better by pairing economic recovery with climate change action. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to collectively design and build a better future together. At AIB, we want to be part of this process, and I believe that we are uniquely placed to work collaboratively with our customers and local communities to create spaces and promote projects that reflect the shared vision of a sustainable future. I am proposing that AIB transforms the locations from where we operate into spaces for positive environmental change and sustainable growth. This will be achieved through 4 key initiatives. Given the current climate, the initial promotion and launch of our green sites could be hosted online to minimise any potential health risks. If that is the case, then we must see this as an opportunity to invite customers and communities to assist in the design of our online offering so that it is tailored, relevant and meaningful in supporting their green initiatives. We have made some fantastic steps forward in rolling out Aib Green Spaces, and I am proud that we are creating the environments needed to bring sustainability to the forefront of AIB's culture, strategic thinking and future planning. I am excited by the opportunity that this proposal presents, but I am also conscious that we must act now if we want to build a more sustainable future together.
This is Olivia. Olivia is a specialist lawyer known as a deputy. Olivia is appointed by a court known as the Court of Protection to protect people like Toby and Brenda who have suffered serious injury or have psychological medical conditions. These protected individuals are known as protected parties. Olivia's job as a deputy is to act in the best interest of Toby and Brenda by facilitating access to any due compensation, medical care and rehabilitation. Unfortunately, deputies like Olivia struggle to find banking partners that understand this sector and are willing to support the bespoke and time-intensive requirements of this industry. Currently, there's a gap between the serious injury financial service requirements and what we, the banking industry, provide. And with a recent survey estimating that there are over 7 million people living with a disability in the UK, this brings to fore the enormity and scale of this problem. To alleviate this issue, my proposal is called the Serious Injury Lifecare Account, aka the Silk Account. Whilst I've labelled this an account, this is way more than that, as it combines my bank's, Arbuthnot Latham's, core banking proposition of private banking, commercial banking, wealth planning and investment management. The aim is for the Silk Account to provide a one-stop solution for all Court of Protection banking needs by zeroing in and servicing the Court of Protection touchpoints. The end product is a banking solution for seriously injured people facing life-changing challenges in one of the most vulnerable times of their lives.
The woman in the picture is Javaira Tafik Jamalai. To my family and I, she is our beloved and late grandmother. To the rest of the world, my grandmother is one of the many women who unfortunately, despite own potential, were not able to follow their dreams. Stories like my grandmother may seem far away from home, particularly at a time when we've made such incredible stride for gender equality. And while the latter holds true, according to the World Economic Forum, it would take about 257 years to close the economic gap between male and women at the current pace of progress. Quite simply, if equality is the goal for all men and women, then equity has to be the means to get us there. Equality ensures that women have the same access of opportunity in comparison to their male counterparts. However, equity actually ensures that females have access to the same means and resources to be equally successful to men. I'm therefore proposing a gender equality lending framework which can be adopted by FIs and other lenders to facilitate and incentivize financing with purpose, specifically to enhance gender equality and gender equity. Fundamentally, this framework will enable gender equality to be streamlined into existing conversations that lenders and their clients or their clients' clients have every day. This would ultimately debunk the myth that gender equality is a luxury for companies who can seemingly afford to do so, or whose operations are directly linked to the cause. It will help strengthen the understanding that gender equality is not only about social justice, but also economic inclusion. And finally, it will make gender equality a reality for all women.
I applied for the Young Banker of the Year for two reasons. One, because I wanted to develop myself and put myself out of my comfort zone.
I entered this competition because I saw it as a great chance to encourage innovation within myself and within our industry.
Well, the Institute supports young bankers because at some stage we were probably those young bankers ourselves.
And it's all very well for people of my generation to stand here and talk about things from 25 years ago, but what's so fantastic is to actually hear about, how people who are really part of that technology generation feel that they can contribute.
To then give them an audience with senior, experienced bankers whom they would not normally be in front of, that's tremendous as well.
We need the best people with the best ideas for the future, and these kinds of competitions are really important in driving that forward.
And the winner is Sarah Walker.
Alistair Gilfillan.
winning the competition, I think, would give a good endorsement of my idea and really help to raise the profile of the idea in the organisation.
I feel immensely proud of myself that I've come this far, and also I feel this will benefit my career now because I've got a platform ready to develop my idea.
Thank you. That's the voting closed, and the results of the audience prize are in, and I can announce our winner. Now, if this was on TV, of course, would have a very long pause, would have dimmed lights, dramatic music, and the close-ups of some very nervous contestants. But this is the Young Banker of the Year, and I'm delighted to announce that in a very, very close competition, your choice for the recipient of the 2020 Audience Prize is Tippi Malgui. Tippi, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I am humbled and honoured. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for a fantastic presentation. Obviously resonated with the audience. I'm so if we were in the Mansion House now, we would be presenting you with a trophy. We can't even do that virtually, but there will be something on its way to you. So thank you. Thank you again. But it was, I was watching the voting coming through, and it was very close sort of throughout. It was going up and down throughout the whole kind of 10 minutes. So very well done.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you to everyone watching. I am really honoured and humbled. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm informed that white smoke has been seen above the Isle of Sodor, where we sent our judges to isolate, and the decision is imminent. So can I call on the president of the Chartered Banker Institute, Bill McCall, to announce the winner of the Chartered Banker Young Banker of the Year 2020.
Simon, thanks very much. And that reference to Sodor, I assume that we arrived on the back of Thomas the Tank Engine. Thank you very much indeed for that. Well, distinguished guests, judges, fellows, and members of the Chartered Banker Institute, and to all of you around the world. Our institute was founded in 1875. And in the charter at that point, it was to improve qualifications and those engaged in banking and to raise their status and influence. In essence, to support a banking profession that our customers could rely on by developing and sustaining a banking profession of highly qualified and highly professional bankers. A banking profession the public could trust, and a banking profession we could justifiably be proud of. Now, there has been much for us to be proud of today, with all four of our finalists displaying the high ethical, technical, and professional standards that our banking profession was founded on, and that the future of banking will rely on as we go forward. There can only be one winner, as they say, and I am delighted to announce that the winner of the 2020 Chartered Banker Young Banker of the Year competition is Tippi Malgui. Tippi, if you've fallen off your chair, our congratulations to you as Young Banker of the Year 2020, and thank you to all of the finalists for making it such a close, competitive, and compelling final. Thank you all very much indeed. Now, I have some housekeeping, and if we were at Mansion House, it would be late in the evening, and the people responsible would be pacing around telling us it was almost time to leave. So in my closing remarks and vote of thanks, I don't have a doorman looking at his watch and pointing, but I can see from the electronic clock ahead of me that time is marching on. As the current president of the Chartered Banker Institute, and I'm about number 60 something, it is the oldest institute of bankers in the world. And once again, formally to congratulate Tippi, our Young Banker of the Year 2020. We set all our entrants this year the challenge of generating new ideas that could drive innovation, deliver sustainable growth, and reflect the ethos of prudent, professional, responsible banking that the UN principles of responsible banking and our institute stand for. Now, as we've heard, these have never been more important for building back better lives, communities, businesses impacted by this current pandemic. Now, on your behalf, our audience globally, can I congratulate Charles, Matt, Tippi, and Anna collectively for developing and sharing with us 4 inspirational ideas. Now, I hope all 4 of you are very proud of your performances today and throughout this competition at the beginning of the year. You should be. And I'm delighted, and I know that council members and members of our membership forum are watching today, and I'm sure they see future members of that forum and our board for years to come. Now, one of the key strengths of this old institute of ours is that it has, in its near 1.5 centuries of existence, faced wars, rationing, epidemics, and much more, and more than a few financial shocks. Yet it has endured. Now, as Simon alluded to earlier, banks and bankers will play a key role alongside governments to help rebuild businesses, communities, and personal finances. And as a leading professional body, we have focused our efforts on ensuring we provide our members with support and guidance during these difficult and certainly unprecedented times. We are maintaining an oversight of the knowledge and skills needed to help to navigate the current climate, sharing resources, webcasts, and extensive range of thought leadership with our members and the wider banking community. Now, our institute was one of the first to move away from traditional exam diets where large numbers of candidates would gather in a room on a set date, watch the clock, and have pressure of that old style examination. Now, that was more than a decade ago. And at the beginning of this year, we introduced a remote invigilation service, allowing candidates to choose a date, a time, a location that suits them. Now, we didn't foresee the lockdowns around the world, but our early adoption of remote invigilation meant that we've been able to continue to deliver our exams with little disruption. The international influence and collaboration we have been building through our partnerships with professional bodies in Australia, the Bahamas, Hong Kong, India, Ireland, Malaysia, Malta, New Zealand, Pakistan, and Taiwan has been a continued focus for our institute. And we're now very proud to have both students and professionally qualified members in 108 countries, and a figure that's up from 87 just a year ago. That's across the globe, all sharing a common commitment to the Chartered Banker Code of Professional Conduct, and to you, our global family. It is great to have so many of you able to join us online today for this final. And thank you once again for your invaluable contribution to making the Institute such an important community. And of course, as highlighted in this final today, we continue to stand full square behind the development of green and sustainable finance. Having launched the Green Finance Certificate, the world's first benchmark qualification for green finance professionals, we recently updated it and relaunched as the Certificate of Green and Sustainable Finance. We're one of the first organisations to endorse the UN principles for responsible banking and are promoting these to our members and also through our international networks. We also led the formation of the Green Finance Education Charter, launched virtually at the end of June. And that charter is a significant commitment from chartered and professional bodies in the UK and internationally to integrate green finance and sustainability into their core curriculums, new qualifications, and the continued professional development of members. The impacts of global warming on individuals, communities, and our world will dwarf those of this pandemic we are currently facing, which is why tackling the climate emergency remains a priority for policymakers and regulators, even though they be distracted for now. From a financial standpoint, central bankers have become increasingly concerned about climate risks in recent years, especially the risks of a rapid transition, stranded assets, and their impact on financial stability. Now, we recently caught a glimpse of what the world could look like if there was a significant impairment or stranding of fossil fuel reserves. This should prompt action from financial institutions heavily exposed to high carbon assets and moves towards reducing fossil fuel exposure in portfolios. So I would argue sustainable finance is hugely important, and mainstreaming sustainable banking and finance is more urgent than ever. Alongside the very significant commercial and investment opportunities for financial services it provides, there is an even more compelling moral case. Sustainable banking and finance is an opportunity for our banking profession to demonstrate our positive social purpose. We can and we must help rebuild lives and communities post-COVID-19. And we must also play a leading role in helping individuals, communities, countries, and the globe transition to a sustainable, more socially just, low-carbon world. Now, there has been much for us as judges and in the audience to be proud of today too. And I hope that all of us here will leave this virtual mansion house feeling more proud to be bankers and more confident in the future of our profession. Banking has always been about stewardship. Traditionally, that was interpreted as being a steward of depositors' funds. Today, we need to put this in a much wider perspective and think of ourselves as stewards of people and environment. We should all take great comfort and pride in knowing that our young bankers, the coming generation of bankers, will be banking leaders. And they place this at the heart of who they are and how they approach their profession. Now, before I close, on behalf of the Institute, I would like to thank the Lord Mayor of London, William Russell, for joining us and his office's continued support of the Young Banker of the Year competition. My thanks to fellow judges, Dame Susan Rice, Karina Robinson, Simone Detling, and Sir Roger Gifford. A heartfelt thanks for your time and bringing your experience to this competition. Also to the Chartered Banker Institute team, especially Anna Young, for all she has done to make this year's competition an outstanding success, despite the very obvious challenges, Anna, and these ones caused by the pandemic. Anna, we thank you greatly. And then, of course, you, our fellows, members, guests, and our global audience from all over the globe in different time zones. And most importantly, wherever you are in the world, remember we are part of the Chartered Banker family. To our finalists, all of whom have displayed the qualities that make them a credit to our banking profession. Now, with a fair wind and a bit of luck and a turn of the calendar, we might actually meet next year. So to all of you watching from wherever you are in the world, stay well. We look forward to a meeting next year for Young Banker of the Year 2021.